Hi, I'm Michael McCarthy. Welcome to The Gathering, the Chiefs Gathering, here at the Atrium Inn in beautiful downtown Vancouver, hosted by Eagle Spirit Energy and the Aquilini Development Group. We're here today to discuss the proposed pipeline and the environment and all the other ramifications evolving from the pipeline. This is an historic day. The Truth and Reconciliation Report has just been released. But here at The Gathering, the talk is more about the future than the past. Jobs and economic prosperity.
One of my friends told me when he dies, he wants Canucks to be the pallbearers. I asked him, what for? He said, no, so they can let me down one more time. We're at a turning point right now where we have to do things for ourselves. We can't wait. The ones about training, and they talk about training, about healing and not healing. I think, to me, as being a chief for this long, I realize that these people are training us to death and not getting nowhere and not doing anything about it. And they're healing us for what? I don't know.
We're only going to get a certain amount of time and a certain window to actually make this happen. And the time is now. And if we don't do it now, it's going to take a long time again to actually bring the groups together to support a project that is going to be owned by Aboriginal people in this province and Alberta.
It's a plan that comes from the communities. It's a plan that is not going to be accountable to shareholders around the world. It's a plan that's proposing to keep jobs in Canada, in Alberta and British Columbia. It's a plan that's proposing to actually not put diluted bitumen in pipes. It's a plan that's actually, I think, one that we should be looking at as a model for how resource development in British Columbia and in Canada should happen. One where we engage First Nations, not as after the fact, but actually as partners from the get-go, because who better to look after the environment than those who actually live on the land that's being affected?
We shouldn't be as poor as we are. And I don't want my great-granddaughters to live or struggle with the kind of life that I've had to struggle with. I want them to have a way better life.
I'm here to talk a little bit about rail, hauling bitumen by rail. Right now, there's a real increase in derailments with CN Rail. Last year, they had 33 derailments. This year, they have 57 derailments. The way I look at it is they're going to haul it. The oil's going to get to the coast one way or another. Last year, CN hauled 128,000 cars of bitumen. A lot of cars, and they're going to haul another 300,000. The train's going to be so long and so many of them that we're going to have overpasses over every line there. With all the derailments, it's inevitable to happen in one of our communities. There's going to be a lot more traffic on those tracks. So when do they have time to maintain these tracks?
There's a large amount of traffic going through, and they usually go at night. And one time we counted them, there's over 250 cars going by every hour at night. And what they're doing is where there's a level crossing there, and they keep the whole community awake by just constantly blowing their whistle all the way through the village. Yeah.
So going forward from the business side, I've sat as a board of director, as a chairman of the companies of my First Nation for a number of years. We've dealt with companies, with CEOs, trying to find ways how we can work with them, and I believe today that in order to be successful as a First Nation, you have to be involved. You can't sit in the sidelines and wait for the government to do the right thing for you. It will never happen. If you're concerned about your environment, you have to get involved. You have to get involved so you educate industry and how you're going to minimize the impacts, the environmental impacts within your territory. If we sit back today and oppose this pipeline that's being proposed, what's going to happen if this doesn't go through? Somebody else is going to bring it through. Somebody else is going to push it through, whether we like it or not. We have a great opportunity as First Nations people between Alberta, Treaty 8 First Nations, and also BC to come together and to show the rest of Canada that we can work together.
My own view is that what we should do is keep diluted bitumen out of pipes, first and foremost. So my view from an environmental perspective is that the upgraders or refineries should be in Alberta, close to source. Ms. Notley has said that she's looking forward to developing and building refineries and upgraders in Alberta. I tend to think that this could be a historic day where First Nations across British Columbia and into Alberta actually take leadership on a project right from the get-go. The reason why this is so important is when we have multinationals putting forward resource projects like Enbridge or Trans Mountain or whatever it is, ultimately they are accountable to their shareholders. Their shareholders demand maximum profit. Maximum profit does not account for maximizing social benefit in the country you're in.
We stand together, as we heard earlier, that we will work together. We will make contact with the rest of the hereditary chiefs throughout the land.
It is my hopes and my dreams, working with Eagle Spirit, Aquilini, and the tribes, that will set a precedent for other proponents on how they should have been doing business with First Nations.
You know, you can do resource business in British Columbia, but you've got to engage First Nations.
And we've had a few go-arounds in our traditional territory with some proponents, industry, logging. You know, they logged south of our community in the 80s and or late 70s, 80s, 90s, come and rape the land without any consultation of us as First Nations. And we never got very, very little benefits. You know, they offered the odd job. But having said that, you know, we aren't against industry, as long as it's done properly.
I think we heard the chief say that this is a historic event. I've never been even seen anything like this done before, and where people have gotten together. And we've been conditioned, unfortunately, by the history of colonialism with the federal government to define ourselves by government processes. And the government's figured out how to rag the puck for 200 years, and we're not getting anywhere. But I think now that people have made the decision to be who they originally were and take charge of their own destiny, I think this is a very, very historic occasion. It used to be a really derogatory term developed when Europeans first came to the east coast of the United States. When they first came, the native people there were all familiar with business and bartering. And they would give the European people some of their goods, thinking that they would give something of value in return. And when they didn't, they took the trade goods back. And out of that, for the Europeans, the notion of Indian givers came. I always thought it was a term that was invented to describe what my brothers would do with me when I was a young boy. But we are givers. What we hear today is the knowledge, the stewardship of the land, those beautiful cultures that are exhibited. When Europeans first came to North America, they had a superior technology, and they were able to defeat a lot of the tribes in one way or another. And the assumption was our cultures were inferior. But that's a very, very short-sighted view, because all of the knowledge contained in all of the different cultures of the world, the indigenous cultures, every culture, is a database of human knowledge and a way of connecting with the earth. And I believe what we can do through something like this project we're trying to do is to give back and show a new way of doing business that's led by First Nations knowledge and wisdom. So I think we are Indian givers, and we've been given for a long, long time.
The old saying is that the only thing that First Nations people agree on is that First Nations people can't agree on anything. But today the leaders of 30 different nations have agreed to speak with one voice and move forward with one vision to make history rather than have history be forced on them again.